Hey, do you teach yoga? Have you ever trained to lead yoga classes, to be a yoga therapist? Have you ever owned a yoga studio? Maybe even just wondered what it was like for the women and men up there in front of the room on their mats, leading you through endless Surya Namaskars, down dogs, and pranayamas galore? Well, these are their stories, and mine. I'm Rebecca Sebastian, a 20-year yoga teacher, 10-year yoga therapist, yoga studio owner, and co-founder of a yoga-focused nonprofit. I've done a lot in the yoga world over the last 20 years. Pretty much everything except had a water cooler. You know, a place to share stories, talk about struggles, successes, and find other people who do the same thing that I do. Welcome to Working in Yoga, a podcast and substitute water cooler for yoga folks to connect and build community, to share our unique profession, our challenges, and our journeys with the world.
Friends, welcome to Working in Yoga. Last week on Monday, we looked at what most of us left behind online, the grin without the body, the channel that's still technically there but isn't actually doing anything. And this week, I want to flip that around and look at the other side of the same period of time, specifically in regards to online teaching. Because while most of us were walking back from online teaching, going back to studios, going back to what felt like, quote unquote, real teaching again, a small number of people didn't, and they kept going. They kept building, they kept posting, they kept refining whatever their online thing was through the exact stretch of time when the rest of the industry's attention went elsewhere. And here's the thing about that. When almost everyone steps back from a space at the same time, and a few people don't, those few people don't just maintain their position, they end up owning the space. Not because they're necessarily better teachers, although some of them are stellar from what I've seen, just because they were the ones still standing there when everyone else left. There's a line from Alice in Wonderland that I think a lot about in relation to this. So Alice asks the Cheshire cat which way she should go, and he basically tells her, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And it sounds like a joke, but it's actually a pretty serious idea. Any road will get you somewhere. It just might not be somewhere that you chose. And I think that's what happened with a lot of us in online teaching. We didn't make the conscious decision to abandon it, although some people did. We just stopped actively choosing it. The road we ended up on instead, back to in-person, back to what's familiar, that's a real place. It's just not necessarily the place we'd have picked if we actually sat down and mapped out our route. So there's also the training program piece that I touched on briefly last week. And I think that's worth bringing back here too, because it's part of why this gap exists in the first place. A lot of teacher trainings, a lot of teacher trainings adopted online delivery enthusiastically for themselves. Their own modules, their own lectures, their own materials all went online, often years ago. But the curriculum about how to actually teach a class online, how to hold a room when the room is a grid of faces on a screen, how to cue when you can't physically demonstrate really, how to build any kind of community through a format that often flattens everything, that content never got built. So you've got a whole generation of teachers who experienced online learning constantly as students and then graduated into a profession that increasingly expects them to deliver online, but they have no actual training in how to do it. The market moved towards expecting this, but our training pipeline never caught up. So here's the question I'm going to spend time on today in this short episode, because I think it's the one that matters, and I don't think it's the question that most people ask. So the question most people ask in regards to online is, how do I compete with a YouTube channel that has 1 million subscribers? And if that's the question, the honest answer is you probably can't. Not on those terms. You're not going to outproduce or out-algorithm or outreach a platform that's been building at scale for years. But it's the wrong question to ask. So here's the right one. What can a working teacher actually offer in an online space that a content platform structurally cannot? And that answer, when you sit with it, isn't really about production value or content quality, like at all. It's about relationship, responsiveness, community. The fact that you know this specific person's shoulder and this specific person's history and this specific person's questions, and you can respond to them in real time as a person. A content channel can't do that. A library of videos can't do that, no matter how good the videos are, and some of them are amazing. The accountability part, someone showing up because they know you'll notice if they don't show up. A platform also can't replicate that either. This is, I think, the actual opportunity that's sort of sitting out there, not the build a bigger channel than the big channels, something much smaller and much more like niche specific. What does it look like to be in an online room with people where relationship is the thing? The content is just the container for it. And that space, relationship based, small scale, responsive, I think is still kind of empty. The big platforms just aren't built for it. The most of the people who tried online during 2021 and then left didn't stay long enough to build it either. It's still there. It's just not going to stay there indefinitely because eventually someone fills every space. So I think it's worth saying too that this isn't a call to go become some kind of like content creator star in the way that that phrase usually gets used. I'm not talking about posting more or finding your niche or building a personal brand online. We're actually going to spend some time in the next couple episodes talking about why that whole model I think is kind of running out of road in the way that we saw it come up in the 2010s. This is something different, and if I'm being quite frank, it's something a little bit smaller. It's closer to the relationship you already have with your existing students, extending into a space that isn't bound by geography. Not as a replacement for in-person teaching, it's just that online is another room alongside the one that you're already in. I don't want this to feel like homework that you're behind on. I think the more useful framework for online is just this is a room that's still mostly empty, and you already have exactly what it would take to be in that room, the relationship piece. The thing that platforms can't do is the thing that you do every week in person. The only open question is whether any of that translates to an online version and what that would actually look like for you specifically, which is going to be different for everyone, and which I don't think anyone can answer for you in the abstract. So this week, the one thing I'm leaving you with is I want you to sit with a reframing question. No action required, just a question to kind of carry around in your back pocket and like stir around in your brain as you're taking a shower. So instead of asking yourself, should I be doing more online? Ask, if I were to build something online that only I could build, something that depended on that relationship piece, not just the content, what would that even look like? You don't have to like answer that question this week. Just let the question be different than the one that you've probably been asking yourself about online teaching already. Okay, so next week we're moving into a two-part conversation about something a lot of us were taught was the way to build a career in the 2000s and 2010s, what I call the soloist model. It's you niche something, you build a following, you write a book, you move on to the next thing. We're going to talk about why that model isn't quite available to us anymore in the way that it was anyway, and what's actually replacing it. All right, my friends, let's go get to work, and I will catch you around the water cooler next time.